And I paused the recording. Now it's being recorded. Thanks, Colleen. So, okay, I'm going to end this poll. Thank you for those of you who responded, and hide it. And then spend just a minute talking about this Adobe Connect format. So you should be able to see my presentation here in the center of the big screen. There's a chat on the right-hand side where you can post questions, comments, reminders for me so I can remember things like recording this webinar. There's a little note at the bottom here, and we'll talk about this. There's an icon on your top bar that you can use to interact with me. It's a little white person raising their hand. Looks kind of like a hand raise. And if you click the drop down arrow right next to it, you'll see icons for agree, disagree, step away, speak louder, speak softer. So these ones at the bottom are like notes to me, like, hey, you need to speak louder, speak softer, speed up, slow down. You can laugh at something that I do or say that's funny, or if you see something, you can applaud something you agree with. Yeah, so let's give this a practice right now. Go ahead and set your little icon to agree. So I'll know if you know how to do this or not. So again, top bar, there's a little white person icon, should be the right to words like meeting, layouts, audio. You might not have layouts. Little white person, hand raised icon, click the drop down arrow next to it, and you'll have icons for agree, disagree, and more. Go ahead and set yours to agree so I know you know how to do it. And if you have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. I cannot see you or hear you, but you can see and should be able to hear me. If you're not sure how to set yours to agree, go ahead and put a question into the chat so I know you don't know how, and we will move on. You can clear yours. If you've set agree, you should be able to re-click it again so it clears it. So go ahead and clear yours if you've already set it to agree. Yep, looks like we're going. I don't see my name under agree. I'm not sure what you see on your end when you click agree or not, but you should, if you, Kelly, go ahead and go to that top bar, click the drop down arrow next to the raised hand and click agree, and I'll see if it works. And if not, you can put comments into the chat because you're able to do that. So you can do that in the future. And will you share with us how we can access the recording later? Yes, once I have it posted, I'll share out the link to everyone who joined and registered, and then I believe we'll put it on Basecamp and our website so people can access it. So you'll have a few different ways that you can access the recording. Okay, let's move on. So hello, welcome to this webinar. We're going to talk about rigor and relevance of CTE. And happy CTE month. It is February and it's CTE month if you did not know. So yay for that. My name is Lacey Boatman. I'm a program manager here at the Napa County Office of Education in our College and Career Readiness Department. And there's a bit about my background. And I would like to know your role. So I have another little poll about your role, and this is multiple choice. So it should pop up here, and just go ahead and complete this so I know who's in the room. And again, it's anonymous. And if you have another role other than teacher, administrator, or counselor, go ahead and put it into the chat if you don't mind, if you have a different type of role. A CTE career coordinator, okay, cool. Got a lot of administrators on here, that's great. Few teachers, good. Counselors, yay. Coach, another CTE coordinator, excellent. Education and workforce manager supporting high school district via the Chamber of Commerce, nice. Okay, I'll give this another second to share your role. And if you missed the poll, you can always add it into the chat. Career coordinator, great. Excellent. And I'll hide this away and let's move on. Okay, so my goals, my vision for this webinar is that you'll leave with a deeper understanding of the rigor and relevance found in CTE. You'll leave with some tools to speak to your students or to others about pathways and hopefully your pathways, and to recommend them for CTE courses that might help them find their way to success, whether they're going to college or not. And that you'll just leave with many resources in general. I always like resources, so I try to give them a plenty to others. So let's do another little poll. We have a couple here, and I'd like to know how familiar you are with both the rigor of CTE and the relevance of CTE. So what's your familiarity with rigor found in CTE and relevance found in CTE? If you're very, if you could be doing this webinar, you could give it a 5 that you know how rigor is seen and met in CTE, you know how relevance is seen and met in CTE. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can give it a 0. And we'll give this another minute. Great, so people tend to be more familiar with how CTE is relevant than rigorous. That's very common, what I would expect. CTE relevancy is a little more intuitive, but if you don't know, that's quite all right too. We're going to talk about that. And give this another second. Got responses all over the board. Oh, I forgot to broadcast. Here we go. You can see them. Again, this is totally anonymous. And we got more people understanding relevance in CTE than rigor. And if you are thinking you're a 0, you don't know what I'm talking about, and you didn't want to say it, that's fine too. And I'll go ahead and hide these away so we can see the screen again and move on. So why am I here today giving you this webinar? Why are we talking about rigor and relevance in CTE specifically? So if education has high levels of rigor and high levels of relevance, then more students will succeed, and more students will succeed in high school, college, career, and life. So our goal is that our programs are more rigorous and relevant, which is why we're talking about this. CTE can help with both rigor and relevance, even though often people don't think of CTE as rigorous, and we'll dive more into that. And that leads us into this next page. There's often misconceptions about CTE, and if you click on this graphic, it will take you to a Google Doc of this that you have viewing rights to, and you are welcome to borrow this, steal it. You can copy it and edit it to your whim. And there's also another little link here at the bottom with an article that I like. I was a CTE teacher, and it's 13 things we wish people knew about career tech ed. So there's often misconceptions, especially around CTE not being rigorous. It's one of the main reasons I'm presenting to you. Many people think of traditional voc ed or think that CTE is for students, those kids not going to college, and it's simply not. I won't read all of these wonderful little tidbits, but this is a resource for you that can help dispel some of the myths or misconceptions around CTE. So that's why I'm here talking to you today. CTE is rigorous, it is relevant, and it is for everybody. So let's do another little poll. What do you think CTE, oh, sorry, I'm trying to find my question. Oh, no, I'm wrong. I don't have a poll. I'm so sorry, guys. I would like you to just put this in the chat. What do you think rigor and relevance means? So what do you think the definitions of rigor and relevance are to you? What do those terms mean to you when you think of education? And go ahead and put your response in the chat so that we can all see everyone's thinking. No poll for this one, just into that chat right over here on the right-hand side. And if for some reason you're struggling with the chat, you can raise your hand here and I can turn on your audio, I think, and we can try sharing it that way if you'd like. So think about what rigor and relevance means. What does it mean to you when you think about rigor in education and relevance in education? We have hard work that will get me into college or a career, level of difficulty, relevance, how it connects to real life. Rigor's level of difficulty, relevance, how it connects to real life. Rigor, students are learning new and important content. It is challenging. Relevance is something they will use after high school. Rigor is critical thinking, meaning making, meaning making, connections across different disciplines. Relevance, employment that will result in living wages. Rigor is being academically challenging. Relevance is how it connects to real life in the real world. Rigor is hardworking. These are all great responses. And feel free to add in more if you'd like. If you missed the opportunity now, that's okay. And we'll keep moving on. So before we dive into rigor and relevance specifically in CTE, I want us to all be on the same page about rigor and relevance and what they mean. So your responses are great. I just want to make sure we all are on the same page before I move into what rigor and relevance looks like in CTE. So these I pulled from an article from the Southeast Education Network magazine. There's a link to it if you want to read it. But rigor is the quality of thinking, not the quantity. So it's the depth of which we go, how meaningful, or the depth of the content, could be content, just the thinking, the quality of it. And relevance, learning in which students apply core knowledge, concepts, or skills to solve real world problems. And I really like this line that rigor without relevance can enable students to be successful in school, but results in failure once they no longer have that structure and guidance. And I'm sure we can all relate to this, either from our own students or from stories we've heard about kids who do well in school, but they get out into the real world and they fail. And that often is because they have rigor without relevance. So the ideal is that learning is rigorous and relevant. And that's where CTE comes in. There's also this great rigor relevance framework. And if you've seen this before, go ahead and show the agree icon. If you have not seen it, you can choose disagree. But this has been around for a while. It's developed from the International Center for Leadership and Education. Again, there's a link. So if you've seen it, agree. If you have not seen it, the disagree icon. And I want to go just explain this just for a second. On the right-hand side here is the continuum of knowledge, and it describes the increasing complex ways in which we think. So it's that creating all the way down to remembering. And this is based on the 6 levels of the revised Bloom's taxonomy. So we have creating, evaluating, analyzing, applying, understanding, and remembering. Then the second continuum at the bottom, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 going across the bottom, starting with knowledge in one discipline, is created by Dr. Bill Daggett, and it's known as the application model. You can see that little title application in the black above it. And it's where we combine these two that we have more rigorous, relevant work. And there's more information on that site if you want to learn more about this. I really like these columns because it shows what the different quadrants mean. So if we look at the A acquisition column, it looks like students gather and store bits of knowledge and information. Students are primarily expected to remember or understand this knowledge. So that's not very rigorous and not very relevant. That's this A quadrant. If we go to the B quadrant, whoops, over here, which has higher application, so it's more relevant and not as rigorous, students use acquired knowledge to solve problems, design solutions, and complete work. The highest level of application is to apply knowledge to new and unpredictable situations. If we look at the C column, assimilation, students extend and refine their acquired knowledge to be able to use that knowledge automatically and routinely analyze and solve problems and create solutions. So this is higher rigor, not as relevant. And finally, I keep clicking the wrong arrow, I'm sorry. The D column, adaptation, high rigor, high relevance, Students have the competence to think in complex ways. Then at the bottom here, there's two resources that I think are pretty great resources from the same people who created this framework. There's a handbook with some direct application things, resources for teachers to use, and then a framework guide. So the handbook is a bit older, from 2010. The framework guide is newer, from 2016. Both are really nice resources if you want to dig deeper into this framework. And they have tools and things to go a little deeper, but I don't want to spend too much time on this right now, but it's a great resource for you. So let's now look at rigor found in CTE. Based on this CTE framework from the CTE, California Department of Education, they talk about two primary sources of rigor found in CTE. There's academic rigor, academic knowledge and skill, and industry-specific workplace knowledge and skill. So workplace rigor and academic rigor. So if we're looking at academic rigor, they talk about that as the application of academic concepts as they relate to a particular industry. So as you think of academic rigor and what that might look like in a CTE class, think of some examples of how academic rigor might be found in a CTE class. And go ahead and add your ideas to the chat. We'll look at some examples right after this, but I'd like to know what everyone on this webinar might think. So think about or some examples of high academic rigor in a CTE class. What could that look like? If a CTE class has high academic rigor, what might it look like? And add your thoughts to the chat. And I'll show you some examples of what I think, but I want to know what you think first. And I see multiple people are typing. We have vocabulary, writing skills, applied mathematics. Yeah. Those could fit into any CTE industry or pathway or class program. And if you're not sure, go ahead and open the CTE framework and take a look. It's a pretty lengthy document, but it ties directly into the CTE standards from CTE. By way of writing assessments or portfolios, yep, great. And writing and portfolios can, again, be in any industry sector, any class. Project-based learning, having industry be engaged, having industry contribute to curriculum. Yeah, industry can certainly affect the academic rigor, and PBL, high-quality project-based learning, is definitely academically rigorous. Math, computer science, engineering, writing. Excellent. So here are some specific examples of academic rigor in CTE. You might have a digital media arts pathway where students are doing a branding project. They could be branding a company or rebranding. Something academically rigorous could be a benchmark along the way where they are reading, summarizing, and reflecting on a rebranding case study. You could apply that same idea to any other industry sector. If you're looking at a case study or an example where students are reading, summarizing, and reflecting. The reflecting piece could be how what they read affects the project they're working on, what changes they might make based off of what they learned from somebody else's experience, something like that. Construction could be an activity or a project like present safety gear recommendations for a construction site, articulating ideas in a logical, clear manner, supporting them with evidence. And I see that somebody raised their hand. If you did it accidentally, that's okay. But if you have a question, go ahead and type it into the chat at any time. So the construction, presenting these ideas, but backing it up with supporting evidence. And again, that same concept can be in any industry sector where you're presenting a case or students are presenting their idea and they're backing it up. They're supporting that idea with evidence. In medical science, it could be a project around pediatric prescriptions. Maybe students determine the correct prescription based on a patient's symptoms, then calculate the dosing by weight based on the prescription and concentration of medication. This has math, science, all in it. So there's a lot of ways CTE is and can be academically rigorous. And what some of you said, reading, writing, math is all part of that. And those can happen as benchmarks along the way as part of a larger project. And if you have other ideas or questions, go ahead and add them. If you need a minute to pause or think, or if I'm going too fast right now, you can do one of those icons, a speed up or slow down icon. But we're going to now look at workplace rigor. Since we talked about academic rigor, there's also workplace rigor in CTE. So from that CTE framework, workplace rigor is knowledge and skill necessary for students to achieve, maintain, and advance in employment in a particular industry. So again, let's think about from you, what ideas do you have of what workplace rigor might look like in a CTE class? And again, go ahead and add those ideas to the chat. So think of examples of workplace rigor in a CTE class and what that might look like, or what an activity might be that is rigorous in terms of workplace rigor. What might students do that is rigorous in terms of workplace rigor? And again, we'll look at some examples. I'll share some examples with you, my own thinking, but I'd like to hear what you think, because you can think of things I won't think of. Workplace conflict resolution? Certainly, yeah. Practicing conflict resolution is definitely workplace rigor. So that goes along with knowledge and skill, knowledge about how to solve conflict, skill for how to actually do it. That's necessary for students to get a job, maintain the job, and advance in it. And it could be specific to an industry as well. Use of industry software, understanding medical terminology, yeah, for sure. Industry software, that's a good one. Along industry software, getting certified, industry certifications is definitely rigor, workplace rigor. Team projects, yes, yeah, collaboration, it's huge in the workplace. And often our students miss that in traditional core academics. Familiarity with employee protocols, yeah, yes, if you're looking at construction, safety, and other protocols, biotech protocols for things I don't understand with their equipment and their labs and writing, that's definitely workplace rigor. Leadership skills for sure. Time management, yes, all are very good examples, some of which I think I'll repeat right now. So these are some examples I thought of in a business class or pathway. Students collaboratively create a team business plan utilizing design thinking. So students could create business plans individually, but if they're doing it collaboratively, they're gaining a lot of skills around communication, collaboration, being able to work together to find commonalities to create one business plan. Could still be small teams, but that's all workplace rigor. Computer science, students might use project management to take some kind of an information technology and IT plan from conception to completion. And along that, they'd be planning, organizing, and managing. That goes along with what Anna shared of leadership skills and time management. And project management could really fit into any industry sector as well. In transportation, students, this could be like a traditional auto program. Students might practice leadership by developing a project to improve their community. An example that we have locally is where students fix up cars to be donated to local veterans. That has much higher workplace rigor than students just fixing cars in isolation. The same thing with those academic rigor, doing those activities, it's higher rigor than if they are doing things alone or without reading and writing or without practicing communication and collaboration and leadership and project management. Very good. Again, if you need a moment to pause, or if I'm going too fast or if I'm going too slow, you can give me that icon so I know that I need to speed up or slow down or give you a moment to think. So we've touched on this, right? The level of academic and workplace rigor is a direct correlation with the degree to which CTE programs prepare their youth for high skill, high wage, high demand careers. So higher rigor, we're doing a better job at preparing our kids for those things. If we have lower rigor, we're doing a poorer job. It's a pretty simple correlation. Now, we talked a lot about rigor. Let's look at relevance. I love this quote. It's from an article linked here for you, The Importance and Relevance of CTE from Psychology Today. And career technical education makes education relevant and important. And from that poll, we all, or relevance is a little more obvious in CTE than rigor is. It makes a little more sense to us about how CTE is relevant. So before I show you some examples, go ahead and add your ideas into the chat of examples of relevance in CTE. What are things found in CTE classes that create relevance for students, that creates relevance for their learning? And add your thoughts into the chat. Basically, what are examples of relevance in CTE? And if you aren't sure, you can open up this article and take a peek at it if you'd like. Real world architecture projects, yep. Work-based skills, yep. We'll go a little more into detail into some of this. Provides real world work experience and insight. For sure. Experiential learning, yeah. Students experience careers firsthand, get realistic view of the workplace. Excellent. Career day speakers, yeah, that's great. Ultimate proof. So some of what we talked about are work-based learning things. This chart here, this again is linked. If you click on the image, it takes you to a Google Doc of this chart. I want to call it a T-chart, but it's not because there's 3 columns. But it breaks out the rigor found in CTE, the relevance found in CTE, and even the relationship pieces. So if we're looking at relevance and how CTE is relevant, we provide students with real-world 21st century skills, learning for a purpose and exploring subject matter that matters. CTE empowers students to learn intrinsically. Work-based learning, which we'll talk a little bit more about, is extremely relevant. Advanced occupational training, high student interest level. So the fact that usually if a kiddo is in a CTE class, they're somewhat interested, makes it relevant to them. It makes that content relevant because they're interested in the content, in the topic. Coherent sequence that leads to industry certification or college entrance, that helps with the relevance. Contextual hands-on learning makes the learning more relevant, meaningful. Interdisciplinary activities and relevant industry sectors. CTE has industry sectors that are relevant to our world. And not underwater basket weaving, which might be relevant to a few of you, but in general, we have high need, high wage industry sectors that are relevant for our students. So let's look at that work-based learning piece. Some of you gave ideas that are work-based learning activities. This is a continuum. Again, the image will take you to a Google Doc version of this continuum. And with any of these resources, these Google Docs, you can feel free to copy and then edit to your desire. Beg, borrow, steal. We're great at that in education. So work-based learning has variations, and you may have seen other continuums, which is totally fine. But this one that we like to use has 3 main categories: career awareness and exploration, career preparation, and career training. And all of these activities bring relevance to learning for students and relevance to why they're in school. I won't go over all of these, but guest speakers was talked about, internships, job shadows, students interviewing industry people to learn more about their career. All of that brings relevance to what they're learning, and it's all work-based learning. Okay, so I mentioned and referenced the CTE framework a lot and linked it back in some of these slides here, right there. And that CTE framework, like I said before, is directly talking about the CTE standards. So I would like to know how familiar, and this is an actual poll, how familiar are you with the CTE standards? And the poll should pop up. 0, not familiar at all. 5, you're extremely familiar with the standards. You know where to find them. You know what they cover. You know what they are. 0, you didn't know CTE had standards, and anywhere in between. Give you a few more minutes to share your thoughts. It's great that we have so many people who are very familiar with the standards. That's excellent. And it's okay though if you're not familiar. That's all right. That's why you're on here and you're trying to learn and grow. That's good. Okay, I'll keep this up just for a second if you want to share. And here's a link to the standards. So go ahead and click on this so it opens up your window. And this takes you to CTE's site with lots of links to the model curriculum standards, some great resources here. I'm going to actually share my screen, I think. And there we go, share my screen. Okay, so this is that site that you should be on your computer or just looking on mine. There's some great resources up here. There's flyers and posters around the standards for career ready practice, if you're not familiar with those. And then there's standards by industry sector. So hopefully you know what industry sectors are at your school or that you teach if you're teaching. And if not, that's okay though. You can open one up. I used to teach arts, media, and entertainment. So we have our main document, and at the very beginning in a standards document, this is a nice little outline to overview of what there is right there. We scroll down. We have, again, those California standards for career ready practice. So these are in each of the industry sector standards. And then after that, we have anchor standards. So here are the anchor standards for arts, media, and entertainment. The anchor standards are very similar across all of the industry sectors, but there are some differences. There's verbiage that is specific to the industry sector, and sometimes there's a few more sub-bullet points in certain industries, but the headers are the same throughout, pretty much the same throughout. And then we get into the pathway standards. So if we go back to that front page, there's different pathways in every industry sector, and different pathways have their own standards. So after those anchor standards, we have our individual pathway standards. This is the design, visual, and media arts pathway, and then performing arts pathway, and blah, blah, blah. And then what is nice too, at the top of each pathway standards, there's example occupations of that pathway. So this can be helpful if you're talking to a kiddo or a student about what they might want to do or what might interest them. There's example occupations you can share. And then at the very end of these documents, there's an alignment matrix where it's broken out for us, the CTE standards and how they align to core academic standards. And this is pretty robust, but it captures the main header of a standard. So if I'm looking at D 10.0, it doesn't break down the substandards, but those main standards are listed in how they align to core academic standards. And this helps show the rigor of CTE as well. If we're looking at A6.0, we can see that it aligns with this reading standard and it matches with it. So that this matrix can really help, going back to, here we go, sorry, can really help share with others the rigor of our CTE courses. And it can help if you have two teachers, a CTE teacher and a core academic teacher who are trying to align, to look at the alignment matrix. If they're not sure, if you have a math or science teacher who's saying there's no connection, you can use this to look at those standards and see where the connection might be. Okay, if there's any, I'm going to pause for any questions so far. Any thoughts on what we've seen? I like the new layout of this framework. That's good. So if you have any questions or thoughts, go ahead and add them into the chat. I'll give a little moment for that. And if not, we will move on. I see somebody's typing, so I'll go back to the question in a second, but I do want to move on. The next piece that we're going to talk about is tools and resources for talking to others about CTE. Okay, here we go. Question: is there anything that shows the high school to community college path for CTE along with pay for those occupations? That's a really good question. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but I can do some digging. I'm going to make a note so I can look for that. High school to community college for CTE along with pay. I feel like that would be dependent on the individual community college. I know some sites, I think Solano County has been working on developing maps for their high school CTE paths to their local community college paths, and they do have pay related, but I think it's specific to that high school and that community college. And they've done a lot of work around bringing teachers together to map the pathways. So I do think these things exist, and I can send you some examples, but I think it's dependent on the specific high school and community college. Yeah, community college have these pay-related pathways. So I'll find some maps that show the high school to community college with pay, some examples, and send them when I send you all the resources from this webinar, including the recording and the slides and everything else. I'll add that to it. Good question. Okay, so this next piece, tools for us to use and things we should know when we're talking to students and others about our CTE pathways. And before I give you tools, you should know before you start talking to people or creating tools, you should know which pathways are offered at your site, what courses and levels are in that pathway. So if there's level 1, level 2, level 3, you should know if they're UC approved or not. And here's a link to the A to G course list where you can search by institution. You can put in the name of the high school and see their list of A through G courses, and you can look for the name of the CTE course to see if it's approved if you're not sure. You should know whether the course is articulated to a community college or not. You should know the associated or related occupations, and that's where our lovely little standards doc comes in with the example occupations. And you should know what certifications are tied to that pathway. So if you know all these things, or a little template to help you learn these things is linked right here. Again, if you click on it, it's a Google Doc. And this is a template I created based off of flyers we have in Napa County. And we have these flyers for our schools. So this is a template you can use where you put in the name of your school. You can change the pictures to relate to the pathways you have. And you add in the pathway names. The instructor name you can add if you'd like. The levels, the titles of the courses. If they are UC, there's a little place for you to put it. If they're a G elective credit, or if they're articulated to a community college, you can put it in there. There's a little spot to put in a short paragraph or a couple sentences about the pathway, a place to list the associated occupations, and a place to list the industry certifications. Once you copy this, you can do whatever you want to this. You can add to it, delete, modify it. If you have more pathways, you might need to take out the paragraphs. If you have less pathways, you can add more information about the pathway. And at the very bottom too, there's a footer for you to put in your school or county office of education name, because maybe you want to use this for a full county office and all of the, or district and all of the CTE things you have to offer. Place for address, state, your website if you have one, and a phone number. So this is yours to use to help you talk to students about CTE pathways you're offering and community about what you can offer. If there's any questions, feel free to add them. And then here's a slide with a ton of links to more resources. There's things from ACTE, there's things from Advanced CTE with another link You can click through these as you'd like, but they're just more resources to help talk to others about CTE. They have some example. I don't think these are editable though for you. I'm pretty sure they're PDFs, but there's do's and don'ts for engaging students and parents around CTE, talking points of the value and promise of CTE, some tools to increase student enrollment by parent engagement. There's a little fact sheet about the value and promise of CTE. There's a nice industry sector sheet from ACTE. So, or this link takes you to different industry sector sheets, sorry. So this link will take you to a page with a lot of other links specifically for various industry sectors. Yes, you will be able to access this presentation later. I will share with you, it's a Google slide presentation. I love Google, and I'll share it with you. Actually, I'll share it with you at the very end of this presentation, and then I'll share it again with a follow-up tomorrow or Monday, a follow-up email. Again, from ACTE, what is CTE? They have a very nice infographic with what CTE is and a little video that CTE is cool. You can play that if you need some resources to share with your school site or the community. And because it's CTE month, yay February, there's a link to CTE month resources and some ideas for things you might want to do. And even though it's this month, you can still do something to celebrate CTE, even if you don't have a whole lot of time to plan. Just jump in and make something happen. And I see there's a hand raised. If you have a question, go ahead and type it in. It looks like, okay, I'm not sure. If you want something, or if you want to talk, I think I can enable your audio. We'll just keep going. Add in something to the chat if you need to. Okay, and here are not more resources. These are the resources that I have given you so far. So this slide just lists out all of the resources we've seen in this presentation so far, the various documents, the sites, the articles that I've referenced. So these two slides, when I share this presentation with you, have all of the resources if you don't want to go through the individual slides to find them again. And this is a list of so we're wrapping up, we're going towards the end of the presentation here. This is a list of upcoming professional development. So some of you who wanted more information around design and designing projects to be rigorous and relevant, some of this upcoming PD might be more relevant to you. There's a webinar next week about how project-based learning meets the 11 elements of high-quality CTE. Then a number of workshops. I'll be doing a workshop on project tuning this month in Contra Costa. So if you already have a project idea and you want some feedback and you want to fine-tune that project, that workshop's for you. A workshop on project design in Santa Cruz. So that when somebody asked or wanted to know more about how to design rigorous, relevant projects, that really needs more than a 1-hour webinar. So I'd recommend for you to come to that workshop. I know Santa Cruz is far. If you want something else local to you, you can go to this very bottom link and fill out the customized PBL training. And maybe you don't want a full PBL training. Maybe you want a project design workshop. Go ahead and fill this form out, and you can make that clear. And I can customize training for you and your area. Anyways, more webinars, relevancy in PBL. Another webinar in March, PBL, a mindset versus a method. That's a repeat of the January one. Another webinar on student collaboration and project-based learning, and then a webinar in May about culminating events. And then further workshops, there's a Designing Integrated Curriculum workshop where Joy Soares and I co-host. Joy is the main presenter though. That workshop's repeated again in March in Santa Clara. A workshop around assessment in PBL and using rubrics, and a workshop on digital portfolios in Santa Cruz. If you don't know how to register for any of these, let me know, and I'll send you the registration links. We can even do that at the end here if you need registration links. Most of these have been posted on Basecamp, I think through March. I don't think the April and May ones have yet though. And then there are 2 great summer opportunities that there are 3-day institutes designed to help teachers create integrated projects. And there'll be one in mid-June in Napa and then one in August in Fort Bragg. And those are 3-day summer institutes for, I guess if you wanted to just go as a singleton to plan a project, you could, but it's really meant for integration, for core academic and CTE to create integrated wonderfulness together. And that's about it from me. There is time for Q&A. So if you have any questions that you want to ask specifically or you want more information on, I can stay on with you. If you need registration links, I can stay on with you. I am going to pull up right now. Hold on one second. I am going to share with you the documents. There we go. So this is, oh, I need to upload my presentation for you. Here we go. This is a PowerPoint version of the presentation, but I'll also send you a Google Slides version tomorrow as a link, or not, maybe it might be Monday, it might not be tomorrow. And then there's some PDFs as well for documents. And then I have a little web links resource here as well for you. And I can go back to these slides if you'd like for the resources if you want to access them. Okay, so on CTSOs, yes, student leadership organizations. I believe a previous webinar had been offered. Do you know if it was recorded or where I can get some info on starting CTSOs? Good question. I don't know if it was recorded. I will look into that. Let me make a little note. CTSO webinar recorded. If it was recorded, I will send the link, and if it wasn't, I'll make a note of that when I reach out to you all. Oh, look, thank you, Angela. Donna, we can follow up with you about that. Okay, thanks, Angela. We'll follow up with you, Donna, about more information on CTSOs. Thank you, Angela, for chiming in. Are there any other questions? You can type them in. If you don't have any other questions, thank you so much for being here and joining the webinar. I appreciate your attendance and your participation, and I'll send out a follow-up email. I'll probably do it on Monday with links to all of the resources and a link to a form to give me feedback so that we can get your input. And if you want further training on things like CTSOs, there'll be a place for you to mark that so we know and we can reach out to you. And thank you all. I hope you got what you wanted to get from this, and if you didn't, I'm sorry, and I hope you do future PD to get what you're looking for. And I'll stay on for a little bit so that you can ask any specific questions if you have them. Thanks for the applause icon. Aren't those fun? Oh, I hope everyone's having a happy Thursday if you're still on with me. And a happy February, a happy CTE month. And if you want to stay on and chat, I can also turn on or enable your audio and your video if you're interested, if you want some further support. You can just let me know in the chat form, and I can work with you on enabling your audio and video, and then we can directly chat if you need more support or have any questions, or if you're just not comfortable typing. But I suppose if you're not comfortable typing, you won't put that in the chat. You could raise your hand. You could use the raise hand icon. But I think most people are logging off, which is cool too. I'll just stay on for a little bit. Maybe I'll check my email. Okay, well, a few people are still on, but I think I'm going to log off. I believe this will stay up for you. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me.